Let's talk about SheZow. Hello and welcome to Foxtrot's Reviews. I hope you had a really amazing Easter. I had a lovely time opening up my Kinder Easter eggs and of course my lovely Lindt bunnies. I said I did have an Easter video. I hope you really did enjoy that. Today I wanted to really talk about SheZow. So one of my friends made me aware it was available on Netflix. So of course checked it out. Also found out later on that it was also available on YouTube. So definitely different locations where you can actually pick up this Australian cartoon. Now it's actually got rather an interesting premise. So it does tie into gender norms and definitely crosses into the transgender spectrum as well. The setup of the cartoon is you have a brother and a sister. You have Guy, who arguably is quite a male character. Obviously you see them skateboarding at the beginning with his friend, which later becomes the ever-changing sidekick, having many different personas. And of course you have the sister, who is a big SheZow fan. Now what happens is they go downstairs, they find a safe, and of course it's found out there's a ring of power, and of course the brother and sister, they fight over the ring, and eventually the brother wins out and gets the ring, puts on the ring, and then suddenly has magical powers. Unbeknownst to him, he actually becomes SheZow, a very effeminate character. So they have, for example, kind of different sprays so they can have a good hairdo, and of course if they don't have a good hairdo, then of course they lose their superpowers, laser lipsticks, a moisturiser that can make them invisible, and they kind of go on a magical adventures because of SheZow's power and responsibilities. And of course the sister, being a massive SheZow fan, kind of helps them along the way. And this is how the story develops. And of course, later down the line, it's explained why he is chosen as SheZow. But it really does go from a very male guy, which I think they didn't choose that by accident, to a very feminine character. And of course, that wears high heels, has his big pink car slash plane slash submarine. What I find interesting in this, it does go from a very male to a very female, and this is where I think some people may potentially get caused offence. It depends how you view femininity, but of course if SheZow loses her perfect hairdo, then she loses her magical powers, one of her weaknesses. So some people may cause offence to that, but what it does set up is a interesting premise where you have a young boy, obviously being a young boy, he wants to be seen as male and skateboard and all these type of things, and then becomes SheZow. And I think that's quite an interesting thing to explore about kind of different identities and how that's perceived. And definitely early on, there's kind of him kind of finding out about SheZow and what she represents to a lot of people. There's a big massive fan club of SheZow, so early on he has to fake about him knowing about SheZow and getting a lot of tips and things along the way. And it also does cover some moral points as well about responsibilities and not taking advantage of situations, and kind of a kickback of that later on with some interesting enemies. I mean, I've only watched about 5 or 6 episodes so far just to make a recording for this video because I just made aware of it fairly recently. It's definitely interesting. A range of what I would call feminine or feminine items like lipsticks and like moisturisers having magical properties, because mostly with the side of cartoons that I've seen and I've grown up with, it's generally been the boys having swords and guns and those types of things which are very much known for being male items having that power, where of course now you have obviously predominantly female things like moisturiser and lipstick and hairspray having those properties. So in some ways you could argue that it's definitely empowering. I don't feel it would go into as much detail as something like Zootropolis, which I do think is very much more layered in terms of its commentary on society and equality. And the other thing that I would definitely question is whether the actual main character, Guy, is actually trans themselves, because it's very much a male character. When he becomes SheZow, he is rather reluctant to do so. So I think it's more an interesting play on how we look at male and femininity than necessarily what I would call maybe a cross-dressing character, but it could be perceived that way. I definitely think it does then tie into potentially things like transgender roles as well. I definitely think it's interesting though. What I would love to know is actually other people's views and perspectives on this. I quite enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't kind of take it too seriously because I didn't think it was meant in that way. It's very in your face about femininity and masculinity. It was somewhat supposed to be a parody of those. Love the little touches, like when in his first action scene as SheZow then kind of trips up over the heels and things like that, that being a male identity wouldn't even think about. So I thought it was quite fun. I think if you take it quite light-hearted, you can get some enjoyment out of it. But if you're looking for something a bit more kind of deep and meaningful, I think you might be left a little bit disappointed, but I would like to get other people's takes on this one, because I enjoyed it for what it was, but for my own personal opinion, don't have high expectations on it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you do have any other ideas for episodes or things you want to cover, please do let me know. Of course, there'll be all my social links at the end, and as always, please subscribe.